for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Okay, after opening the meeting, we do have a section on our agenda for public comment. We do have one member of the public here.
No comment.
No comment. All right.
Can I hold that for later in the meeting?
Well, if it's appropriate at the time and relevant to our agenda absolutely.
Thanks.
Moving on to the approval of meeting minutes that require a vote. The meeting minutes for May 15th.
I move to approve the meeting minutes from Monday, May 15th.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
We have a second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the May 15th meeting minutes as presented. Those in favor?
Aye.
Looks like unanimous vote. Moving to the executive session, meeting minutes for May 15th, which were in executive session for negotiation purposes. Do we have a motion?
Before we do that, I believe we could do these for public release at this point.
I wasn't sure.
Well, I don't know yet. That is just the
Lieutenant.
the lieutenant. Yeah, we could probably release that at this time.
I'd move to approve and release the executive session minutes from May 15th.
We have a motion made.
I believe I was, I think I was late on the meeting coming in, so I have to
Okay, well,
abstain from that.
I will second that motion, and those in favor?
Aye.
And one abstention, correct?
Yep. I'm sorry.
May 23rd.
I would just move to change my name to the absent area.
Okay, that was the attendance of the board membership at the public hearing, above budget hearing that was actually at a Budget and Finance Committee meeting. We make that one change. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those,
Motion?
I motion to make the change now. Someone else would motion to approve as amended.
I think we have a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, with the change as noted. May 24th meeting, meeting minutes.
I'd
That
move
was
to,
just to approve the warrant.
I'd move to approve the minutes from Monday, May 24th.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to approve the meeting minutes for May 24th, 2023. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Town Administrator Report. Greg?
Madam Chair, board members, just to give you an update on the One Stop for Growth grant. We did submit a grant application on Friday for Phase 2 of the master plan. The amount was $100,000 with the assistance of the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission. John, you're probably familiar with it. This is Phase 2, and we will wait for a decision on that. But I want to thank the Planning Commission for their help with that grant application. FY 2023 budget transfers. I did send the board a note, and I've got hard copies here if you need it. Cindy, do you need one?
No, I'm not.
Thanks, John.
Oh, no, I do need that, I'm sorry.
Do you need it?
Yeah.
Thank you. So this is just for your information part of the meeting. I don't anticipate, other than the snow and ice deficit, that we have to fund it at town meeting. Typically, the way the towns do it is at the end of the year, in late meeting in June, we'll do interdepartmental transfers, which require approval of the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee. They do not require a vote of town meeting. But you can see the accounts that we're projecting will have a deficit in by the end of the fiscal year. The town administrator's salary, $4,650. The elections department, $13,764. Town building budget of $43,931. Our purchasing, central purchasing account of $11,445. Our snow removal account, $74,125. Street lighting, $14,920. Our library budget, I did speak with the director, and he said that he would get back to me, but I wanted to put a placeholder. And then general insurances, which is primarily our property and liability insurance and vehicle policy, $5,830, a total of $94,540, not including the snow deficit. And then I went through And I did list out the departments that I project will have surpluses. And the good news is the surpluses are larger than the deficits.
Mhm.
So we will go forward with the snow removal coming out of free cash at town meeting, the others with your direction coming out of interdepartmental transfers at the end of the fiscal year.
Are we letting anybody in the, shall we say, department heads know that we're gonna freeze these accounts at this point, or?
So actually, what I did was I estimated what they would need for the month of June.
Oh, you did, okay.
So unless there was something that was unusual, and I certainly will give them a heads up, it's
Yeah.
important for them to all understand. But I did project an amount similar to what they've spent, their 11-month run rate I took, and then I projected the 12th month at the same run rate in the previous 11.
And some
And
of
these are
the,
the surpluses that came out of it.
and some of the larger ones, the health insurance must be a bill that we already know.
Yeah, and it's not,
Quabbin Regional Assessment down 47.9.
right,
Those are, locked in, and that's, close to what we'll need.
and
to
the other, regional dispatch,
Yeah.
and the county retirement, and the health insurance, those are kind of locked in, and I think those ones by themselves will probably
Yes.
pay for what
I
we
agree.
have for our deficit at this
Good.
point.
Great news, thank you
So
so
no,
much.
no reason for any action on that tonight.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. And then the other item is, I spoke with the town's auditor, Sullivan and Powers.
Powers and Sullivan.
Might be Powers and Sullivan. And they are completing the FY 2022 municipal audit. And they're willing to come in and present that to you in a public session, which I think is always a good thing.
I think we never have done that in the past, and I think it's absolutely essential, because there are things that have been noted in the management letters in prior years that have not been addressed, and I think it's important for us to hear it publicly and to begin to grapple with.
And it gives the
issues.
public an opportunity to come in and participate.
Right,
It's all about transparency
Yep.
and showing what we have. And there's no crises, to the
Nope.
best of my knowledge,
no,
but
I mean, there's some deficiencies in our protocols and in our way in which we're managing.
But the nice thing
But
about that
we can
is
fix them pretty
we can
easily.
identify those deficiencies and then hopefully set a course of action
Exactly.
through the board in terms of correcting those. They don't correct themselves unless the board says this is something we want to have done.
Would you expect that we would have that in our next meeting?
Yeah, so we can have him here on the 20th,
Okay,
which is our next meeting.
okay, great.
And we'll invite in our financial officials and the finance committee, but ultimately the public also has an opportunity to
Absolutely.
be there also.
Sounds great.
And so once that meeting, before that meeting, the audit will be finalized. It's not final right now because we need a couple of signatures on the representation letter.
Mhm.
So when we get those signatures on the representation letter, the audit will be finalized. And I'm also an advocate of posting those things on the town's website, so that the public wants to go through it, they can go
Mhm.
through it and look at it
Mhm.
also.
Yeah.
That's it for my
Are
report.
we meeting on the 19th, the 19th
19th is a holiday.
Juneteenth.
Yeah.
Got it.
Right, so we're meeting
Yeah.
next on the 20th.
Got it. Okay. So
That's
we'll-
my report, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
And I have a lot more stuff on the, needs
Yes,
to say
sir.
the budget and town meeting and town administrator recruitment,
Right,
and ambulance service agreement and so forth, but those will come up under the agenda.
okay. Select board reports, any comments, John?
Yep, so in discussions with CMRPC, they are able to come and give a presentation on starting a TIP project. So they are planning to have someone for our June 20th meeting.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the TIP project and what it is?
Yep, so a TIP project is a roadway improvement project that is funded through the state's transportation improvement, transportation improvement projects is TIP. It's funding that comes through federal or state, from the federal government through the state government. It's quite a process. Usually it's for roads that aren't in terrible shape, but will need to be redone in the next 5 years. It's usually a more intensive process with full redesign. Typically, it'll have to meet Mass DOT standards. So it's a question of, would it be worth it for us to pursue this? There are only certain roads that would qualify, that are eligible for state funding. I think there are a couple candidates.
Would Mechanic Street qualify?
I'd have to look on one of their GIS maps,
Okay.
but
I mean, I'm sure there are some roadways that would qualify.
absolutely.
This would be something that I would suggest and recommend that we invite DPW
Yep.
Commission to attend if they would like to. I think it's important to
Yep.
have.
At
'cause they
least
would
if our DPW director, Jason, could come, because there's a few other transportation and traffic-related items that I intend to have items for our next agenda as well. potentially a speed hump program, and also looking at some parking-related ordinances, or at least, establishing different, just reevaluating some of our parking areas. So something I also want to reach out to the police on and get some of their perspective, see if someone could also attend for that.
Well, so we would like to let the chief know
Yes.
that we would
Yep.
have some information that he might be very helpful in providing
Yeah,
us.
I think especially, when it comes to enforcement, that's probably more their area as well.
I just want to
So-
make it clear that we're not trying to upstage anyone, that
No.
we're the organization, or the part of the organization in the community that has to really pursue these grants and these opportunities. And we need to find out more about them, and really hope that those individual department heads would, if they can, be in attendance. If not, they certainly can find one of us to get more specific information. Mark?
And I've had some
Yeah,
good
how do they define
conversations.
the eligible roads?
So I believe it has to do with the classification of the roadway, whether it's a collector, arterial, local. So obviously, 68, 62 would be either arterial or major collectors, South Street's collector. It's mostly defined by volumes, I would say.
The heavy volumes, of course.
Mhm. But there's a road inventory that Mass DOT has that defines each road.
Okay.
So,
Sure.
I thank you again, John, for your work on the master plan. I know that continues to be a burden on you a little, and I appreciate the time that you've taken and the number of people you have involved.
Well, and we also appreciate everyone working together to get that application in for Phase 2 funding. We're working on the first 3 or 4 chapters, and it would be great to get the other 4 chapters in as well, to have a full master plan.
Mark, do you have
Yeah,
something?
mentioning with Mass DOT, just kind of a side note on that, I've spoken to the foreman out of Athol, who he handles this whole area, and he sent a letter to his district office, so to send a letter to National Grid there's some large overhanging dead trees along
Yeah.
122 down
Yep.
For sure.
from Fruitland Road down to, I think it actually goes all the way down to Vernon, no,
It goes
yeah,
up.
all the way to Vernon now, there's
Yeah.
some overhanging
Old-
trees.
Old oaks too that are ready to,
Yeah, so I asked him what, what he thought about it. He said, well, he thought that maybe we should draft a letter and send it to the National Grid as well,
Mhm.
because they are gonna be pretty dangerous pretty soon.
Yeah.
we have some other trees too. Greg, you might be able to provide assistance on this. We have a lot of very large elm trees that have been so damaged by infestations of insects that they are just totally rotten and standing there
Mhm.
on 122, on West Street, and really a public nuisance and danger. But they're really state, I think it's a state issue, it's not our
On
local
122
tree warden, it's
particularly.
through the state, and I don't know, there may be some way in which we communicate with the state regarding those trees and try to move forward with getting them taken care of, because they're not any healthier every year. In
Yeah,
fact.
they're frightening when they're in
They're- Yeah, well,
a state of
and
coming down.
there's so many of them,
The caterpillars have.
yeah,
the
they did a
ones-
job on
yeah,
it.
that's what.
And so I guess if you can just do a little insight in that and see if you have a name that we can, someone we can call and write letters to and try to get some representative who might come out and look at them. I'm sure there's so many of them, so many places that
Mhm.
we're just in line.
But trees
Well, if we don't.
that are ignored can cause problems,
Yeah.
as we all know.
Mhm.
Exactly.
I think in light of that too, also just making sure that we do, stay on top of Mass DOT if they are planning any roadway changes to 122, assuming something could be coming down the pipeline with the state of it. That's not something that the town would be responsible for in general, because it is state maintained, but we want to make sure they're following, their healthy transportation directive and other things that they've put forward for the towns to follow.
Because there's no question that they've done some pretty shabby repair work this season, and people have led me to believe that that is because we're in line for that section of 122 to be addressed.
I would hope so.
So it's kind of rough shape. You have other things?
Yeah,
Mark?
one other thing, in light of all the I want to bring to the board all the sewer and water discrepancy issues on billing and whatnot. And the letter that we received on the 4th of May about Chapter 90 money, having a problem with possibly being late on the ability for free cash certification. I was thinking that it might be a good idea to move or relocate the office of the DPW, the Secretary's office, possibly up to here where there'd be more support. It would be, I think it would be better all around. And having all that, I guess the excuses has always been so that they're not recorded. Well, all the files will be here at that point if we were able to do that. That's, it's something I'd like to.
Have a
possibly put on the
conversation about.
agenda. Yeah, have a conversation with,
Well, I'm guessing that, it's always nice to have everybody in the same spot who's working on the same projects and so forth and responsibilities. So I'm sure they will have an opinion on that, which we would like to hear.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously, what we want to do is to ensure that we provide the support necessary to make sure all of the financial stuff, because sometimes just laying it on the feet of one person without any support.
well, that's what I was, that
We
was my
might be able to
thoughts.
provide a different mechanism for that, but.
Right, with the town accountant is very close, and I think that would be, if there was questions and whatnot, and we need help, it could probably move it along faster as far as any paperwork or whatever that needs to be filed at certain times to, make it happen, that's all.
Well, if we want to add that for discussion at the next meeting, hopefully
Or DPW?
DPW representatives will be able to be here for that meeting.
Yeah.
Well, the
Or
DPW.
DPW meeting before then,
The
yeah.
DPW meeting is next Monday, so.
Yeah,
That's
so we could have that
So
conversation.
we could certainly bring that up there, and just indicate, that it's an effort to try to do whatever we can to support. It's hard to be a satellite office sometimes, and they may prefer that, so let's just have a conversation about
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
Okay. Anything else?
There's some public comment on that topic.
No, Sam.
Sam?
Mark McGinnis mentioned some sort of a letter. Is that letter available for the public to? Because you mention a lot about letters, and during these meetings, you speak about, not public comment, but sending, where is it here? There is correspondence.
Mm-hmm.
So when these people talk about these letters, shouldn't they be part of public correspondence, or maybe should they be made available to the public? And I'm the only public here.
Yeah, well, some of those letters are internal communications between and among office personnel. So where they're under the Freedom of Information Act, those can be made available to the public. But there's a zillion of those little things that crisscross and so, just, it might be a simple email that I send to you, Greg, and say, can we check and talk to the school district because they voted a different
Yep.
assessment last night? That would be a correspondence, I guess, if somebody asked for any correspondence of any way, blah, blah, blah. I think probably under the Freedom of Information Act, we would be required to provide it.
We provide it,
Yeah.
so long as they're specific in terms of what they're looking
Yeah.
for. We have no reason not to provide it.
No. And I think that letter that the correspondence might have been something from the accountant, as she gives us information about, okay, it's this time of year, don't forget to get this done. It's this time of year, don't forget to take care of this. They're not reprimand letters, they're just, hey, guys, here's the town clerk. Hey, you have to have the warrant X number of days, don't forget. Sometimes it's a walk upstairs and people will speak to us, but I don't know the specific, I think it was from the accountant.
My question is why doesn't the board, the commission have access to that as well? Did they have emails? You know what I mean? I mean, we are part of the commission, of the board,
Oh, I'm sure they have that information.
but it wasn't, none of them were named on the email.
Oh, I don't know.
On that particular email that we're speaking about.
So I guess my question is, how do I get a copy of this letter that we're all making somewhat mysterious?
Well, it's really not very mysterious, but, I mean, just, you can request a copy of this, once I find out what the specific letter is. It was not, not something that I, committed to memory, so. It
So
was,
it's-
it
you
was,
say it's not in correspondence.
well, it probably was in correspondence if it was emailed to Greg or to myself or to others on the board, it's correspondence.
So should that be made public? I guess that's the
Well,
question.
if you said to me,
But if it's
Maureen,
important,
should every correspondence that you people get be made public? I would say, under the Freedom of Information Act, technically it is. But I am not gonna be up at the Mimeo machine or at the copy machine and on any given day and telling you, this we got from National Grid, this is a vendor trying to sell us something. I mean, that's crazy talk. I mean, so what I would say is, if there is a correspondence that we feel would be helpful to the public, or you'd like to request it, we'd make it available. I don't know
And
this.
the other point is that, yes, it's publicly available. What is exactly the process for getting that? Would that be going to Greg to get
Yeah.
that?
Yes,
Or the
Okay.
town clerk.
Yeah, so you can get that from Greg or the town clerk.
Yeah.
You can get a copy of it.
I'll have to tell you what the correspondence is, because you would say, give me any correspondence from the town accountant that has been shared with Greg. That's one way, because I can't tell you what date it was. I know that it's an annual kind of thing that we get, alerting everyone, watch the dates, make sure you do the paperwork that's necessary to ensure Chapter 90 reimbursements, blah, blah, blah.
Well, it was an alert, it was more of an alert because the free cash certification was held up the last time
Yeah.
because of the very same thing.
Yeah.
Right. We need to make sure that doesn't happen
Yeah,
Yeah,
to the best of our ability.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
feel it's very important.
Critical.
Critical. Yeah. So if you want a copy of that,
yeah, the one
that we're
that's,
talking about.
the one that everybody's so
Yeah.
semi-protective about, it might be
Well,
interesting.
I don't think we're protective about it. It's
No,
Might
just,
be interesting to.
It came up at
Might
select
be
board.
interesting to read.
Yeah, it's, you might find it interesting. The topic came up, and when it was originally discussed was a few select board meetings ago, when it was sent out at the beginning of May, I believe it was.
Mhm.
And so that's why it wasn't included in anything here. It's not really part of it, but, it was being referenced back to.
Yeah.
But that topic was brought up, I believe.
Because, everybody, and I say everybody, I speak previously, but of
Mhm.
course, my name is Neil Anders, know who he
Mhm.
is. He always spoke about transparency. So
Mhm.
when you come to a meeting and they're talking about a letter back and forth, nobody knows where it is, it comes from the accountant. It's always very nice to say, we made copies for you here.
Well,
Yep.
And in case there's a lot of discussion, I don't think people want to see.
I would tell you that of all the correspondence that probably goes to you during the course of a week, or goes to me during the course of the week, 90% of it we never even mention here.
I agree.
And this issue is just mentioned because he's brought up a concern about Chapter 90 and making sure we provide the support necessary to ensure that all the paperwork is done. And so that,
Right, it's not something that was on the agenda, so I don't think anyone was prepared to have the
Yeah.
exact wording of it ready. This is just part of his select board report.
I do have a question about
Yeah.
Chapter 90. I've always
Yeah.
had some puzzlement. Is that some time ago, well, we all know that Christian Hill, whatever the other
Mhm.
name is terribly potholed.
well, that's a kind word, yeah. It's
Well,
pretty, it's
whatever.
awful. It's
It's
awful.
terrible.
Yeah.
So why did this town, in their good thinking process, allow and support the paving of Stetson Road, which hardly gets visited, with fewest houses, in lieu of Christian Hill? And from what I understand, it was Chapter 90 money. Could not someone have
So I-
seen,
Yeah.
could someone not have seen that, let's do Christian Hill instead of
It's
Stetson
not
Road?
that simple.
So,
To
yeah,
my
I can,
civil engineer.
I can answer that question.
Thank you.
Junior, I'm not quite
Okay.
licensed yet, but,
I want to hear this.
okay, so the explanation there is that Christian Hill has been under design for a while. So this kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the TIP project, where when a road is being redesigned, it's a more lengthy process. It's not just throwing pavement down. So that has been under design. The issue there is that they're waiting on pipe. They're waiting on, well, actually, I believe they're waiting on drainage design, because we can't just pave it the way it is, or it's gonna deteriorate again. So we need it to drain properly, and there's a lot of ledge under that road. So there's a civil engineering company that's been working on it for a significant amount of time that is wrapping up those plans. I'm trying to remember exactly how long the wait was last time it was discussed at DPW meeting to get the pipe that we're looking for. There's essentially a shortage still. So that is a project that is in the process, but it can't be put together as quickly as something like Stetson Road. It should be nearing its completion. It should be done soon. In design, and then it should be going to construction as soon as the design's done. We can bid it out.
We had hoped it would be at bid in June or July.
So
Which it's not.
that being said, when you're saying that it's it's basically a full depth excavation project on that road with could be
ledge.
blasting and whatnot,
There will be
or
blasting.
hammering and whatnot. It's designing a road, pretty much designing a road. Well, I feel as though doing what Stetson was done at Stetson, there should have been a lot more of that done as well.
I tend to agree with you. Stetson Road, it was approved before I started here as part of the paving list. There were concerns at the time, and that's why Mass DEP actually ended up getting involved, and I went out on a site walk there with them at one point to review it, and, maybe we need some better guidelines for paving dirt roads as to what we expect to be done in advance.
Who
But-
approves
The paving list?
This board that approves the paving of the road?
The commission actually votes what roads they feel, and they had a plan that they were working on, which was non-paved roads. And they had listed, when I came on the
Mhm.
board, there was a list of non-paved roads that they were working on to get paved. And then the final list comes, after it's voted by the commission, it comes to us for approval. And then we approve, whether it be Stetson Road or, I'm trying to think of some of the
Which I
others.
believe should be our next meeting. We should have the paving list for this year
Yeah.
to approve.
Yeah.
So that should be at our next meeting.
Is that the regular, Greg, in your, from what you've seen, is that typically how it goes?
It's done differently in different
Different
towns.
towns?
Sometimes the board approves it, sometimes the DPW director approves it, the board decides that they don't want to have a conversation about roads in a public meeting for whatever reason, and they delegate
Measure
that,
why.
and they delegate that authority to the DPW director.
I had a conversation with a past selectman this past weekend, and he mentioned to me that the select board used to get in the car with the administrator and go around, and they would decide what roads were to be done, and that's the way it used to be done. I was just wondering why things changed, or if they changed.
Well, I would
That might be
I-
challenging with open meeting law.
Yeah,
but,
yeah, and well, I would say that is not necessarily, in my opinion, the best way to do it.
Yeah.
The best way to do it is to have the experts. We happen to have kind of an expert in, engineering, okay, with us on the board. That's different.
I know
If
some
you-
of what I'm talking about.
yeah.
I wouldn't call myself an expert.
Okay. Compared to me, you are an expert. So to put me in the car and with whomever, with Greg, and us to drive around and say, okay, yeah, this road, or gee, we've got more complaints about this road, let's do this road. I don't think is prudent. I think it has to be members of the DPW department that make decisions because they have the expertise. They're hired for having this expertise.
So what you're saying is complaints don't count?
Well, I wouldn't say that complaints don't count. I would say that their complaints always have to be addressed and considered, but there should be a road plan, I think. But this is not my bailiwick, okay? I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
If you wanted to maybe talk Board of Health stuff, I can get into that. I have a
Yeah.
background in that. But,
I'm not gonna be
yeah,
able to-
but I would say that the process that was used, they had a very specific list when I came on the board. They discussed those. They had the public from the roadway actually come in and talk about it. They talked about drainage issues of concern. So the public has been involved. They had hearings sometimes when there would be people who didn't want their road paved, other people who wanted the road paved, and there would be a tussle back and forth, and ultimately the decision would be made by the commission, and then ultimately this formal vote by the select board. So I think the process has included the citizens involved and impacted. There's always complaints about Christian Hill, and that has been under design and under consideration for a lengthy, since I've been on the board.
10 years
Only
anyway.
2 years, but, and I would say that Mr. Hosley has been particularly, I
Yes.
mean, really raising his voice about his frustration with it, about it not having been done more quickly. And so it is a process, and it is a process that involves the public, the citizens on the roadway, the select board, and so on and so forth. If you said, is there a plan that's multi-year? Probably. I do think that the DPW has some idea about what is next on their books, because
And that could be something good to revisit.
yeah, and we can revisit that, but I don't for one moment think that it's capricious and arbitrary. I do think they have a plan.
Now, the other option too that some towns now use is a pavement management plan. And what you can do essentially is, and I believe you can use Chapter 90 money for it, is to bring in an engineering company. They will rate every road, determine what that road would need for rehabilitation, how many years you have until it would decrease to a different level, and through that strategize the best way to add lane year miles to your town with the money that you have. And that's, if that's something we want to consider, I think we could probably have someone come in and present on how that would be possible at the next meeting as well, if we wanted
Well,
to.
I think that should go to
Put that
the,
in.
to the DPW commission meeting,
Mhm.
more likely than to our meeting.
Yep.
I mean, I think that there's a group of individuals there who have a good idea and an idea about where the water issues and water lanes, problems are. And there's no question, we have some significant, road issues that are very expensive to fix, like Mechanic Street, that's a ugly, bad road. The same thing with Christian Hill, those are two, very important roads to the community, anyway.
And I think that's why it's important to start.
Talk about that,
Yeah.
I mean, it has been for a long
Yeah.
time. We've had several accidents on Mechanic Street because of an iceberg that comes up
I
right in the
I
middle.
talk about that at least, every
I
bad,
know,
every
I mean,
bad
it's a
winter
danger.
day.
I know personally,
and-
two friends of mine have gotten in an accident there.
Yeah.
And I'm-
But I mean, it's not an easy fix. It's not like, because it seems that there's a stream or some sort of a,
It comes out of the
spring.
bedrock in the middle
Yeah.
of the road.
And there's blasting, and you're talking about homes that are located within feet. And I know they can blast close to homes, but I have been, my home has been the victim of people blasting to put foundations in, hundreds of yards away from me, that took a real big crash out of our, property. It is what it is, but I would just say that this is definitely the commission's work, and I think we can give them our thoughts, and those meetings are open to the public for people who want to come. And when they have a road issue, they're there. I mean, so I would just recommend that the the plan that you talked about, the TIP project and so forth, all of this is good information for us that should be brought to the commission's attention, and hopeful that we can work together to get as much state support and money as we possibly can.
And I mean, that, essentially goes back to why it's good to start a TIP project now before a road gets as bad as
Yeah.
Christian Hill.
Yeah.
By the way, I'd like to thank the board just now for the transparency about this issue. It's quite a concern to a lot of
Oh, absolutely.
citizens, and it's always good for them to hear, not that we're working on it, it's always good for them to hear that we all have a conversation about it, so when the folks watch this on TV, they say, oh, wow, I didn't really say I really cared. So I think I think that's very helpful. Thanks. And Neil Anders would be very happy.
Okay, I have, Mark, do you have other?
I'm done, thank you.
John,
I'm good on reports.
you want to, go ahead. I'll just-
No, I'm also, I did my reports
Oh,
before.
okay. Just to have one more conversation that I seem to have every day in my life, is about the expansion of broadband across our community, and the difficulty we are having getting, now, shall I say, Spectrum/Charter/Spectrum, whatever, to work in concert with us to try to get the plan to provide that broadband expansion that our citizens absolutely deserve. They have been waiting patiently for years now, and the fact that we have had such difficulty getting, I think, good communication from Spectrum is a frustration, particularly for me right now. I think maybe Greg, you might be there with me at this point. We have an attorney that's working with us to work with us in our relationship with Spectrum or Charter. We have another engineering source where we're actually trying to get our own numbers to ensure that when we do finally get numbers and a commitment from Charter or Spectrum, that we will be not overpaying for what we need for our community. We figured that there is some 68 people who have actually filled out a survey, but we know that there are probably 90 homes that are not serviced. And it's very difficult for an individual to try to get Spectrum's attention and say, can you just bring it down, Sheldon Road? And they say, for 60 grand, we'll do that for you. I mean, that's so inappropriate. We do have money in ARPA reserved for this. We're just trying to get the commitment from Charter, Spectrum. And I don't know, Greg, I don't think we've had much, shall we say, success in the last 2 weeks since our last meeting, even though we've had meetings with our attorneys and meetings with engineers. We're hopeful that we can get firm and final information from them within the next 6 to 8 weeks, because obviously we need to get this project moving. And I would say it's very frustrating. And I think probably our correspondence has to now be with who's in charge at the state level. Who sort of says to Spectrum, whatever, yes, you're a monopoly, we get it. Because they're a monopoly. They don't care if we get these 68 more houses or 90 houses. They own the 2-foot place on all the poles. They have the license for it. If another company would try to come in, they're not going to come in for 90 houses. That would be, so they're not considered a utility, and yet their services are critical to people, whether they want to do medical stuff online, whether they want to do educational stuff online. These people have no access. They have no access. And that's something that we're really working hard on. It's a great frustration for me. I will acknowledge that. And I think I'm making it a great frustration for Greg. And I'm hopeful that within the next 6 to 8 weeks, we can seemingly get Charter to the table. They've come to the table with very divergent costs. 400,000, 300,000 I think we started with, then 400,000, then 700,000. And we asked them, well, does this mean you'll drop the line at the house? Can they then just tie in? Oh, no, we don't know about that, So we have had very frustrating, time with them, so. But we are going to be continuing to work with them since they are the only game in town we have access to. So, that's my complaint, but I just wanted the citizens to know that we are working on it.
Have you ever thought, I can understand what's going on, and I've seen it in other areas. Sometimes if you get all the citizens from the town and all the citizens that are affected and start the process of litigation against these companies, because it's taken a long time and we have this money that may or may not dry up.
Yeah, that was a question.
True.
Well,
And,
you and I understand, though, that litigation could burn through anything money we have, and we could end up years in litigation.
But we might get the state's help, because these companies, this company is acting like a monopoly, claiming that they're the common good, but they're not the common good, because they won't even come to the table. I think maybe, I'm not a litigator, I'm not an attorney.
Nor am I.
But sometimes it might be just, for instance, like the fire department wanted to get something done a while ago. So they sent all the firemen around to all the citizens in the town of Barre, and they got something done. Whatever it was a while ago, and it happened. We have the fire department. Thank God we don't have very many fires. Maybe it might be smart to get them on board to go around and with a common letter where an attorney draws up this common letter and submits it to the governor, submits it to whomever controls these.
Well, maybe the Director of Rural Affairs can help us.
There we go.
Give her our first thing.
Okay.
Squeeze
So-
them.
That's a good place to start.
Yes, it is.
The Director of,
The Director of Rural Affairs, that is that is Senator Goby, who's resigned her position today as senator,
Oh, I
and
see.
will now be the Director of Rural Affairs in the cabinet of the new governor.
Well, that might be a good start.
That'll be a good start, and
Good for you.
I have her on speed dial.
Good for you, Maureen.
So, but anyway, I just wanted,
Good for us.
I just wanted the public to really know that we are working on that.
There was some additional comment.
I just got a question now.
Yeah.
Who's paying for the cable to come in town? Our tax money's paying for that?
So-
ARPA is, which is I can't remember, this is federal money that came down to, one of the express purposes was to expand broadband in rural areas.
Oh, I see, okay.
American Rescue
American.
Plan.
Oh, yeah.
But we have to still pay to get it attached to the house anyway. That's separate.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah.
But prices, I heard from everybody that the cable prices are so high. I've got the internet, but I have it through the phone company.
Oh.
It's just slow. Oh, yeah, it's slow.
you're kind to say slow,
It's slow, it's slow, I know it is.
yeah.
But they told me that it's so slow because there's too many people on it, and it's a small town, and we're out 2 or 3 miles from the center.
Yeah. Anyway, so I think that's it for under reports.
Well, the only thing I see more and more is the clawback. They're talking about the
Yeah.
clawback of all this money. Is
That's-
anything advanced on that in the last few days?
Nothing that I've heard, but
Okay.
federal legislation usually moves very slowly.
Yeah,
And it was tied to the whole conversation about the crisis with the debt limit.
yeah,
And I believe they've found a solution to that.
They have,
Yes.
they
But
passed.
that was included in,
there is still a clawback.
There is.
That they're gonna be from.
just a question,
Yeah.
that's all.
Yep,
Yeah, and you and I have had that conversation about
It's a concern.
our need to potentially in a near, one of our meetings upcoming, to have a conversation about, sort of encumbering X number of dollars
I
for
think it's
this,
a good thing.
X number of dollars
Yeah.
for that. We know that we wanted to work on some playground upgrades around the
Mhm.
community, and parents have been enthusiastic about our efforts to try to do that.
Mhm.
So, we've been very prudent with this money. We haven't really gone crazy and spent a lot of it because we've been trying to make sure that the cable stuff, the stuff that we did this parking lot at the school. We're probably going to do a police cruiser. We're probably going to potentially think about an ambulance and so
Right.
forth. Because, and we're trying to say, we do public safety, we did schools, we're gonna do, broadband, and all the things that are in the ARPA, guidelines, we have plans to do, so we'll just keep hoping.
Would it be good to put that on the fast track before we do lose it?
Well,
After town meeting, yes.
Yeah.
Until town meeting,
Yeah.
probably not.
Yeah, but that's just a
Yeah.
week away.
Yeah.
It is.
One more thing, Mr. Femino, I spoke with him earlier today, he had a concern with, property next to his down on, what's that, Canal?
Main
Canal
Street,
Road.
somewhere,
Yeah, what was that? Did you wanna talk about that at all, or?
Well, the guy, they're not paying taxes, they're using the Swenson's old garage, they used to do way back.
You remember
It's going
Swanson?
down now, but it's just, they lift the wall stand, and he's gonna use the old, they stop them. And it's hazardous site, it's contaminated, and they're using it, fixing cars, ripping motors out and everything.
No, can you have a number on the,
The number, well, I guess it was 108, the DEP called and said it was 108, it was only 106.
Well, they changed it,
Yeah, it's 116 now.
yeah.
116?
Yeah.
Now, when you say it's hazardous, how do you know that?
Well, the tanks were never taken out, oil on the site.
You're sure, you're sure about that?
I worked there when I was a kid, so I know it's a mess.
Well, I know, but since you were a kid, it's a little long, some decades ago. There's never been a cleanup of that area?
No.
I mean, they're literally in the water table.
Right.
Mm.
Whoa,
Yeah, Johnny
Okay.
Caruso next door had a well, a shallow well, and I guess he got pound water now, but it was getting messed up.
okay, so your concern is the contamination in the soil?
Well, it's just dumped everywhere over there, and as you work on cars, there's some oil out, oil on the ground.
They make it worse, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Put it down,
Yeah.
like a week ago,
Okay.
and I don't know what to do about it, but the numbers,
Well,
the numbers.
we may rue the day we can communicate with DEP about this.
What road was that on again? I'm not
It's
picturing.
down in, where the Mill Restaurant is?
Yeah.
Okay, if you go for the Mill Restaurant, but you're going to go back toward Barry Plains,
Yeah. Mhm.
it's on your right. And I'm sure it's one of those places that you and the,
So, just where it is in South Barry, it might be worth mentioning to the engineers that we have working on the block grant
Yep,
right now. That is,
that's.
I don't know if that's something that the block grant could, potentially have an effect with, but it's worth at least trying to find out.
Yeah, if you're not paying taxes, you're over $12,000 in taxes.
And you know this because,
And I guess he's not paying it, but he's using it, the guys are working on cars.
well, I'm saying, you say he's in arrears for his taxes of up to $12,000. How do you know that?
I checked from the tax office.
Just checking. Okay, well, I can only tell you that we would follow up on this, probably with, first with John, as he talks to his engineering folks down that area, but obviously, if we make a call to DEP, that will,
Yeah, I can email Chris at CMRPC. He's helping us work
Yeah.
through the Southbury block grant.
I had
Funding.
a number for DEP, but when I talked to her, she was down there last week.
okay.
Okay.
And she looked at it, and they gave me, say, well, I didn't clean it up, I didn't have time, and just,
Yeah. Well, DEP is not,
For years.
yeah, but DEP certainly usually takes to task people who,
Well, see, they didn't know, like, the numbers would change, they didn't know it was the same number. I mean, they had it, was registered like a 106 or 108 or something like that, and now it's 116,
okay,
so they didn't know that.
okay.
You remember the Swenson's garage?
I certainly do.
Okay.
It's all torn down now, but it's just.
Mhm.
Steve, you and I know where this
Oh,
one's
yeah,
going.
I worked in that, I worked for John Swenson and Basil.
I do too.
Basil Lizzie, I worked for him when I was a young kid, pumping gas.
We're all old enough now to say, take your right near this old Swenson garage,
Yeah.
John
Oh,
isn't.
yeah, really, yeah.
okay? But people who are new to our community go, what?
It's 20 cents a gallon for gas, too.
Yeah.
20 cents.
That I don't remember.
I don't remember 20 years either, but, okay, so moving on then, do we have any correspondence, Greg, that concern that we need to address?
I didn't have it.
We have nothing.
We have an open correspondence, okay, moving on. Annual town meeting warrant review and recommendations.
So I think the easiest way, would you like to deal with budget first or town meeting recommendations first?
Why don't you do whatever you feel would
So
be
I
the
think,
best
I think
interest?
town meeting, and then we'll just hold the budget article separate.
Okay,
So that would be the water budget, which is a separate article,
great,
the sewer budget, which is also a separate article, and then the omnibus budget.
right,
And we can talk about those three, which all kind of fit together better.
right. Okay, go ahead.
So Article 1 is perfunctory, it's
Yeah.
choosing of town officers. That's done through the annual election process, so there's no action that's required.
Mhm.
Article 2 is reports from boards and committees. That's included in the annual town report, but if there's anyone else that wishes to make a verbal report to town meeting, they have right to do so, so there's no action that's required. Article 3 is payment of bills from a prior fiscal year. There are no bills, so there's no recommendation that's needed.
Good.
Fiscal year 2023 budget transfers, we talked about that at the earlier part of the meeting. We will do those as end of fiscal year transfers, except for snow and ice deficit, which is a separate article. So there is no action that's required under Article number 4.
And that's and the number that will be brought to the floor, is it $74,000?
$74,125, and that's under Article 5.
Yeah.
And would ask you to consider that in terms of
Yeah.
recommending that for funding.
Now, generally, will we be making the warrant articles so that, for example, whoever reads them then gives them to the town clerk?
Yeah, that's,
Okay,
that's the plan.
okay, because last year, I think, or 1 year, we didn't know who was doing the warrant
So,
articles.
we'll print up those copies, individual motions for each article.
Right,
And I'm presuming, like in the case of the planning board, the motion will be printed up, but someone from the
Yes.
planning board would read it.
yes,
So we'll go with that normal
Yeah.
practice. Article 6, I'd like to come back on. Article 7, I'd like to come back on. Article 8 will be a passover.
okay,
And the reason why it's a passover is, I learned after I put the article in, that the money needs to be voted as a revenue source as part of the omnibus budget. So that's the way it was done last year, the article was passed over last year. So we'll do it the same way as it was done a year ago. It's
okay,
$520,000, and it will be included within the revenue sources to be voted under Article number 9.
right,
Article 10, so the schools have given us a revised budget number. I'm sure the board members are probably aware of what that is. So the new number that came in from the regional school district, $6,492,678.46. 46 cents. That's a little bit over a 4.75% increase. And the total increase in the budget from the current fiscal year is $292,817.65. And that amount, the $6,492,000, is within our set aside for revenue
Right.
plan. So I would hope that you would consider recommending that. PEG access is standard, $25,000 coming from the PEG access grant to be used for cable-related programming. Article 12 is a standard article dealing with, I'm looking for the word, reauthorizing various revolving funds. I don't have a copy of it available, but there are no new revolving funds that are being added. They're all revolving funds that have been approved in the past.
Okay.
Article 13 is the annual authorization for expenditure of Chapter 90 funds. The language is standard. It's for fiscal year 2024, and I'd ask you to so approve that. Article 14, this is its abbreviated version, but at town meeting, the entire bylaw in its entirety will need to be read. So that's the new Chapter 70 of the Town Code, which establishes the town administrator as the town's chief administrative officer and defines what the duties, powers and duties, and other appointment powers of the town administrator will be. So we have that, and
Is that ready to be shared publicly
yeah,
prior to the meeting?
yeah, oh yeah,
Okay.
sure.
We have that ready to go,
So we
or close to?
it's ready.
Okay.
So we filed a copy of it with the town clerk, but we also don't have any problem putting it up on the website. I know that there's still copies of it sitting behind me on the.
And we
Yeah.
will have copies for people to take in hand.
So what I'm gonna do is, when I do the motions book, so that motion, the booklet,
Yeah.
that has been done in the past,
Right,
I'm gonna include the entire verbiage of this article in the motion, so when they just need to grab a copy of the packet, and it'll be in there.
there,
Yeah, I
that's,
think it would be,
everybody is very accustomed to that, using.
They're
that.
having that way, the way
Yeah.
it's done.
Yeah,
I think it would be good to have it on the website available
As well.
prior, so anyone who wants to review it in more detail can.
Let me make sure
look
that
through
I
it.
get you that tomorrow, we'll load it up.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Article 15 is a zoning bylaw article that Mr. Crusoe had come in and presented the board with,
Was
dealing with rezoning.
Was there ever a recommendation by the planning board?
Their hearing is tomorrow night, is
Tomorrow
my
night.
understanding.
Okay.
So you may want to hold off on recommendation on Article 15 and Article 16 until you see what the planning board's position is.
and Article 17.
Correct, so Article 17 is,
And 18.
Article 17 and Article 18, those are all, so we can put down recommendation at town meeting by the Board of Selectmen on those, I think that's the best thing.
Mhm.
And I didn't see the actual language on Article 17 or 18 until I received the details today from their clerk. They're quite lengthy and similar to what we will do with the town administrator bylaw. We'll put the entirety of if it's gonna go to town meeting,
Mhm.
we'll put the entirety of that language in the booklet.
Okay.
So people will be able to see it in all of its glory.
And online too, ahead of it if we're able to.
Okay, and it's possible that they may request, if the planning board requests that their articles be passed over, then that's simply, that'll be the motion that's put before town meeting is to pass over.
Okay.
The ones that are sponsored by the board, 15 and 16, if they come out with an article to not recommend, we'll still put it forward because they are articles that are sponsored by the Board of Selectmen.
Yep.
Well, I mean, I don't know if we said that we sponsored them, we just said that we thought that they were worth public comment.
And that's the way
Right.
we, so when I have to give a description for each article
Yeah.
in the booklet, I put in that the articles were submitted by the Board of Selectmen at the request of a resident.
Yes,
And leave it at that.
leave it at that.
Didn't advocate one way or the other.
Mhm.
Article 19 is the replacement of the chiller at the middle and high school. This is per vote of the regional school committee, so I included it in its entirety. Some towns may decide that they received an email today saying some towns may wish to pay it in its entirety rather than doing the borrowing. But the way we would prefer and the way it's financially structured for Barre is that we pay this thing off over a period of years and add it to our capital assessments
Yeah.
as we normally do.
Yeah.
Article 20 is a request by the town clerk to have $15,000 available to update the town code, which is the book that is in hard copy and also online. It's basically all of the town's bylaws, rules, and regulations. And the cost that she received was $15,000 from free cash. I think it's a reasonable request.
Mhm.
Article 21. So we have a couple of articles coming up now that are for our savings accounts. The first is Article 21, which is looking to set aside money into our OPEB, other post-employment benefits account. The requested amount is $25,000. The balance in the OPEB account is presently $84,712.03. So with your approval, we'll seek $25,000 from free cash to add to the town's OPEB account. And I think it's a good idea to do it regularly. Article 22 is to add money to the town's general stabilization fund, $25,000 from free cash. The balance in the stabilization fund is $781,280.44. So this will bring us up over $800,000, which I think is an important number. And it's also a number that, when the town wants to get a bond rating in the future, the bond rating agencies will look and see how much money the town has put aside. I call it the town's rainy day fund, and I think annually we would be wise, when we have free cash, to contribute to it on a regular basis. And then Article 23 is the capital stabilization fund. So this is a special purpose stabilization fund that was created back at the 2021 town meeting. It has a balance of, what is its balance? I think it's fairly small. I want to say it's about $24,000 or $25,000 is the balance in the capital stabilization fund. I don't have the exact number, but the proposal is to put in the remaining amount of free cash that we have. So it's about $267,000 into the capital stabilization fund. And the reason why we want to put in such a large amount is we have significant capital purchases that we've made over the past year, and this account can be used as a source to pay off that capital purchase. So, for example, we have the fire truck, and the fire truck will be paid off over a period of 7 years. This will provide us a funding source to be able to pay that off without adversely impacting departmental operations.
Yeah.
So I kind of would say that, I said $267,000. It depends on how much is left on free cash, and this article is kind of the last one for a reason, is that whatever we have for a balance in free cash is what we want to transfer into this account. Article 24 is a article submitted by the Board of Selectmen to clarify the appointment process for members of the Council on Aging. It amends the town's code, and it says that members are to be appointed by the Board of Selectmen. There's some fairly, I call it convoluted language that's in section 405 of the town code right now in terms of appointments and nominations, and this would clarify the board's role in that process. Article 25 is an article submitted by the Council on Aging, and what it supposes is that there be a combined Council on Aging board of Barre and Hardwick, comprised of 4 members from Barre and 3 members from Hardwick. And then it talks furthermore in terms of how those members are appointed to the committee. And so that's something that we haven't talked about in the past at a meeting. All the other articles we've talked about, whether this would be something that the board would support, having a combined Hardwick, Barre, Council on
Right now,
Aging.
they have a council on aging board in Hardwick that's independent, one in Barre that's independent, but they're really merged. The Hardwick folks come to the Barre and they do all their activities
It's a
together.
great idea.
And having I understand why they would want this and have talked with some of the individuals who think this would be the best way to manage. And it gives we pay the greatest amount because most, we have the largest number of people come from Barre, but it's sort of like the regional school district, it's by enrollment. So they have 3 members and Barre has 4, which if I were in Hardwick, I might be not voting for this because I would say, well, that means Barry's driving the bus. But anyway.
I think my concerns on this, I don't know, based on Mass General Law, Chapter 40, 8B, which defines what a council on aging can be, there doesn't seem to be any provision for combining. I'm not entirely sure that this is within what's allowed by the state. I think that's a concern that would need to be addressed. Also, it convolutes a bit who the commission reports to, how it's not exactly clear in here, where people are being appointed from necessarily.
There'd be
If
a
the-
reduction in the board as well.
It would
wouldn't
be, yeah.
there Now,
Pretty,
how do
it's
we-
currently 9
that's-
members from
It was
Barre.
9 members, now it takes down to
And then it would
7.
be, well, from Barre it would be down to 4.
What's that?
4.
It would go
Four.
from 9
Maybe
to
a
4
total
from
of
Barre.
7.
A total of 7, but
Yeah.
there's 9.
Right.
How do we,
I believe-
how do we handle that?
I believe a couple spots are vacant right now. Essentially what would happen is at the next time we appoint, or reappoint, which would be at the end of this month, we wouldn't make reappointments. And that would take care of a couple spots, but there might still need to be,
There's still,
well, the select board would have to remove someone.
yeah, how do,
Yeah.
How would you like me to say it in terms of the board's recommendation?
I,
To BD.
Okay.
I'd move to not recommend it, but
Well,
without further,
I would rather ask a few questions before we just voted to not to recommend it. Are you feeling comfortable just not recommending it without having further conversation?
I think, well, unless we're seeking legal counsel on if it's even legal
Well, I
under
would
chapter
suspect
40.
to be determined, subject to legal counsel's approval.
So council, I don't have his report in front of me, but he did indicate that the article was, there are other ways to do it. He didn't say that it was illegal, but he did review the language that was here, and he made significant edits to it
Okay,
to get it into the final version that you have in front of you today.
okay.
Mhm.
I'd only ask what the board's
Was this-
pleasure is on this one.
Was this submitted by, who submitted this?
This was submitted by the Council on Aging.
Okay.
And like you said, the article had significantly different wording in it, and council did some revisions to get it down to the point where he believes it's legal in its current format.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm okay with no recommendation. I'd still lean towards not recommending, but
I wouldn't recommend it.
all right, well, I'll make a motion to not recommend.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
I would abstain until finding out more information from the individuals on the council.
Okay.
Because they must be putting this forward for some reason that they think makes sense.
And we can change our recommendation at the meeting
Yeah.
as well.
I just wanna talk with them.
Yep.
Because I don't know how they operate, and I would be remiss to say, yeah, just dump it because I thought so.
Article 26. Article 26 is to ratify a private cemetery to be located on Hardy Road. It's been previously
Board of Health.
been approved by the Board of Health, and the final step in the process is to, a cemetery, any and all cemeteries have to be voted and approved by town meeting. It's something I learned in one of my other jobs. So people may ask why it's there, because it is required, consistent with the 1925 legislative act.
Oh,
That's why it's there.
okay.
And then Article 27 is allowing a member, elected member of the Board of Assessors to work as a paid part-time position. And we've included the language that's here. I'm presuming that this is fairly standard.
Yeah, we've
And-
had one for a long
And
time.
it no doubt saves the town considerable
Yeah.
money versus bringing in someone from the outside who doesn't know the community and paying them to do this work. Okay. Let me go back to the budget. So, first I'm gonna hand out the revenue plan, and I'm gonna really try to highlight the changes in everything that we talk about tonight, otherwise we'll be here until 11 o'clock, and no one wants to be here that long, especially me. So, the revenue plan has not changed significantly since the last time that we met. The new growth was revised from 70 to 100,000, based upon a 5-year average that I looked at. The unrestricted local government aid was consistent with the Senate Ways and Means budget, provides us with a little bit of extra money. And the change I made today, and for some reason I didn't flag it, if you look under local receipt revenue, other taxes and excise, that's motor vehicle excise tax. So that's one of the biggest local sources of revenue that we have. And I dropped that by $16,325. The reason why I dropped it was so that the budget would balance to the dollar. So there's no methodology there. I didn't want to have a surplus in revenues. So I just dropped that so that it equals out and there's a balanced budget, which is really what we have at this point, is a balanced budget.
And you say under schools, the article on schools, you didn't include the money tech assessment in that.
Yeah,
Is that,
so yeah, the Monty Tech assessment, so.
it went down, I know.
So when we do the school article,
Yeah,
the Monty Tech assessment will be within that article.
okay. And the debt number?
And the debt.
Okay,
And so I think the Monty Tech assessment, you've correctly pointed out, went down.
yeah,
And I'll make sure that it's in that article,
yeah,
that it's there.
okay.
Any questions on revenues? Let's talk about enterprise funds is the next piece. So I will hand out, take one and pass it down. Thank you.
And I know this may be, obviously, it'd be I know that the DPW superintendent called me and was very concerned about the information that was presented
Yeah.
at the hearing with the finance committee. A couple weeks, on the 23rd, I think.
23rd, I didn't make any changes to the indirect costs, so
Okay.
that was the one item that they were concerned about, and that's something that's in progress, as we would say, and I don't want to provide you with something that's
Okay.
not necessarily
Okay.
correct, so I made no changes to the indirect costs. But,
But I do think that there needs to be clarification
yep,
on that. You and I have talked about.
I
the need for
understand.
that. Okay,
and I'm trying to get to the bottom of that.
sure.
I do just want to say that before we go too far, the submission of the enterprise budget to town meeting, the DPW commission submits it to the board.
Right,
The board is the chief executive. In accordance with the Department of Revenue regulations and rules, it's up to the chief executive to submit the enterprise fund budget to town meeting. If there's any question, and the reason why I bring there's any question about whose budget gets submitted to town meeting, it's your recommendation that gets submitted to town meeting.
okay.
Town meeting has every right to decide they want to recommend or amend or do whatever, but it's the chief executive's job to submit the budget to town meeting. I want to be clear that it's your job to recommend the budget for the enterprise funds to town meeting. And I just want to make that, so the
So that would
change.
be for water and sewer.
Yep, so the changes I made, and these are consistent with what was presented at the Finance Committee hearing back on May 23rd,
Mhm.
was to take the non-union employees and give them the same cost of living increase as everyone else, which is 2%,
Mhm.
and that's been done. And then to level fund the water and sewer union positions, because we're in contract negotiations. Town meeting can't appropriate money when there are open contracts. Once the contracts are settled, town meeting must appropriate money to those settled contracts, but you can't kind of do it in anticipation of. So I've revised the salaries for the union employees and overtime to level fund, both of those in water and sewer.
Mhm.
And so the new water budget total figure is not including indirect costs, but if you look at the,
Down the bottom?
including indirect costs. Wait,
Okay.
Yeah, so including indirect costs, the water budget would be $731,359. And you see it on the sheet is listed as 758, 509. So it's, I did the math, and it's 731,359. And that includes the departmental operating expenses, including salaries, and it includes the indirect costs on the bottom of the page. And then on the sewer department side, because the sewer department budget is larger,
And so when you look at the percentage change there, that is of deep concern, correct? By-
yeah,
Okay.
And that's for the request, not for the TA recommendation.
right.
Right, okay.
So the concern obviously is that either the indirect costs have been understated previous, and this is correct, or this is not correct, and we're trying to ferret out why that might be.
That's exactly,
Okay,
that's exactly it. And like I said, I want to be able to present information that's correct and accurate versus saying, I think this is the way it's
Yeah.
done.
Mhm.
And on the sewer side, the total budget is, with the changes that I've made, is $998,810. So that's the bottom line budget.
mhm,
And again, the same changes that I made in water affecting contractual employees and non-union employees apply to sewer.
Okay.
The general fund budget. I made some copies of it.
because, yeah, this-
Here you go. No,
that's-
so there really are, the latest changes were to the water and sewer enterprise fund budgets, but again, to kind of reiterate the changes that we've had going, is the town administrator's salary is increased to reflect market conditions.
mhm.
That's an increase of $20,081. That's on page 1.
Yep.
On page 2, the police lieutenant's salary has been increased to reflect his settlement with the Board of Selectmen.
Yep.
You see that.
Yep.
And then the chief also made a number of other revisions, but the bottom line of the budget didn't really change. He was just moving money around from one category to the next. The other item that's fairly significant, if you look at the very top of the third page, that police cruiser.
Yeah,
So the police cruiser, $72,000 is being paid for through the ARPA fund.
and the board would have to vote that.
Yes, and I want the board to be clear that that helps us get a balanced budget.
Right.
And I think with the ARPA plan, it makes sense to do it for 2 years, because you don't want to do it for 1 year, it doesn't seem like a plan, so you're just using it to fill a hole.
Mhm.
I did speak with the chief, he was fine, he just wants his cruiser. He doesn't really care about the source of funding, so the board would need to do that. So I'm gonna keep it in the budget, because he did request it, but I'm gonna show that the source of funds is ARPA, the number doesn't get rolled into the bottom line of the operating budget. There are no other changes, other than we get down to the bottom of the third page, and you've got the Quabbin Regional Assessment, and as the chair had pointed out, you've got the Monty Tech Assessment and the Quabbin Debt Service, which are shown in here. On the next page, there are no changes. I think I mentioned you previously that I had a conversation with the member of the library trustees and the library director that we meet the minimum required
Yeah.
appropriation for the library,
Mhm,
and this budget does that,
mhm.
so that's the reason why. And then the health insurance budget has just been updated previously to reflect the actual quote that we did receive. So those are the major changes in the budget, and if you turn to the last page, the operating budget surplus is 0. There's no, it's a balanced budget, because I mentioned I lowered one of the revenue sources to get us balanced, so that's,
Greg, what would be your strategy, should we find, after a more careful analysis of indirect costs, that if we can't get some of those indirect costs out of enterprise, obviously, we're gonna have to make some other decisions,
Yep.
right? Okay, so.
Yeah, we'll have an alternative strategy for that.
Yeah, we'll have to.
We'll have to have an alternative strategy.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, either they've been underfunded previous, or these numbers don't really reflect accurate. I don't know.
Yeah, there was one of the numbers, and I looked at it, and it was the county retirement,
Yeah,
and it went from, let's say, $608
yeah,
to 36,000 or 38,000. It went from $608 to $63,000.
Yeah.
And a number like that would get anyone's attention.
yeah. But, and it may be because, you know, there has not, indirect costs have not been accurately determined.
Right.
Or the ones that we've, you know, inherited to look at are suspect. Somewhere.
So maybe a little bit of both.
Maybe a little bit of both, so I'm eager to see
Me too. I just gotta work my way through the
I know,
numbers and
yeah.
understand where they stand, but there'll have to be a contingency plan in place that if the indirect costs are not as they're stated here, that we have a contingency.
Right, okay.
On one note, would we be able to add just line item numbers to help with discussion at town meeting for the final budget that goes out at town meeting?
So what we do is, when we do the motion, and it's not shown here, there'll be a separate column that will show the FY '23 voted and the FY '24 recommended. And it's my understanding that's what the town meeting votes.
Yeah.
Rather than voting each of these, this detail will be in the book.
Yeah.
But the vote will be based upon a more streamlined version
Yeah.
of what the bottom line is for each department.
And also, what will happen, the moderator will make a decision to do chunks, perhaps. He will do consensus agenda for chunks of this. Has he discussed that with you at all?
No, I have not been in touch with him because I suggested it might not be a bad idea to
Get to
have a
it.
conversation with town council before
Yeah.
town meeting.
Yeah.
And discuss where there's some areas that may be problematic.
Yeah.
That can take place at any time between now and town meeting.
Okay,
But just for the sake of, if there is discussion brought up about particular aspects, if we could just, have a number for each line.
oh, I see what you mean.
Just 1, 2, going down, just so we can easily refer to them and make sure people are following along if we do need to refer
Oh, all
back to
right,
this.
so you're talking about like a department number?
So they're
No,
all-
just literally for each one, just 1, 2, going down through each row, just an item number.
Okay.
Just for the sake of
Okay.
reference.
Okay.
Well, usually account number, the back end of the account number is pretty easy as well. But, it's just a chart of accounts that was stated.
Yeah, I'm kind of squished with the amount of space I have.
Yeah.
So I'll do my best to accommodate that. At a certain point, the warrant becomes unreadable because the type gets too small, but, yeah.
You're getting close to that.
I'm pretty close because I had to switch it for landscape for you to be able to see it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's, I guess, the way that we'll go to town meeting is people will have their book and they'll be turning it like
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
to be able to read the budget. But I certainly will do that, John.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any further questions? We've talked about the budget a lot.
Nicely done, great presentation.
So the finance committee is meeting tomorrow night.
Yeah.
They'll go through and do their recommendations. We'll marry your recommendations and their recommendations. It'll go in the book that gets presented to town meeting. And I think I've complained to you, Madam Chair, that the booklet is an ambitious effort
It's a
for
very
a town of
ambitious.
for a town of this size.
Yeah, it is.
One other, I believe when we were talking before, you said each debt excluded item would be marked out.
Yes, I have to
Okay.
do that. Yes.
Yep.
That's a good suggestion. I forgot about that, John.
I believe the school folks will be there to talk about their articles and other individuals. The Council on Aging, I'm assuming, will show up to talk about their article as
Yep.
well, whether that's helpful or not, so we'll go through that. I'll try to seek out.
Good suggestion, John.
Anyone else have any questions or concerns, or, I expect, what time does the meeting start, 6:30?
6:30.
6:30? I will definitely attend. Now, we have not really taken a specific vote.
Oh, you're talking about the finance committee meeting?
Yeah.
6:30.
We haven't taken any specific votes as a board. Is that something you believe we should be doing and saying Article 1, Article 2, Article, should we be going through those and doing those votes? Or are we assuming the snow removal accounts we're in favor of? The water enterprise accounts, we know those have to have some modifications. Do we just, I don't want to be trying to vote this, in half hour before the meeting
So I
starts.
put you in favor of everything. We have Passover articles.
Yeah,
We have the water and sewer enterprise budgets,
Okay.
which as recommended by the selectmen, which are, the only one I have is a not recommended is Article 25. And everything else I'll just fill in as recommended, rather than sitting here and going through and for the third time talking about
and
the
we
same
are,
article.
we
With the
have,
exception of the planning board ones?
yeah,
That we'll
Yes.
have no recommendation on
Yes,
until we,
okay, so
at town meeting, right?
Article 25, yes, there's a majority of a vote not to approve, and I think we're good then.
So, hold on.
And we normally post a meeting prior to the annual town meeting?
Yes, we do.
What time would you like us to?
We start the meeting at 6:30, correct? The
Right.
town meeting starts at 6:30, probably 5:45. I don't expect we'll need more than.
Unless we need a contingency plan for the indirect costs, that's the only thing
Yeah.
that's out
Well,
there
I
right
would,
now.
I would say then, why don't you just wait to do the final posting until closer to the meeting? We'll know the enterprise funds, and we probably really should, have a conversation with the DPW on this as we work through it. Because if we're this far apart, having a wrangle on town meeting floor is not necessarily what we'd hope for. We would like to make sure we present the information as we know it and say this is the way it's supposed to be, this is what the Department of Revenue says. They'll say, we never did it this way before, and they're robbing our enterprise funds to support the general fund budget. I mean, we could say, and I don't know if we have the data to say that at this point, no, for years, you've robbed the general budget to feed the enterprise funds. I don't believe anybody's done anything untoward. I just think that there's some new information from the Department of Revenue as to how we're supposed to do this. And I think there was past efforts to try to figure that out, and I think it brought tears to some people's eyes.
The smaller the town, the bigger the battle on indirect costs.
Yeah.
It's a truism.
Well, the thing of it is to see some 63 and 70% increases without very specific data to support that
I know that.
change. That's my concern.
I know that.
I just want to make sure that we're doing the thing in the proper order and that we do it correctly. Okay. Okay. Greg, do you have further information for us? I thank you for all of the very detail that you brought to our attention.
Yeah.
It's been very, very helpful and puts us in, I think, in good stead. I will definitely be at the meeting tomorrow so we can walk through.
So we're, like I said, other than the one question about indirect costs,
Yeah, we're good.
we're good.
Yeah.
We're there.
Yeah,
And, we'll see where that battle goes.
exactly. Okay. Well, hopefully it's not going to be a battle. It's just going to be an understanding.
Conversation.
A conversation and understanding in the end. Okay, I think we're ready to move to town administrator recruitment and engaging a consultant.
Oh, yes. So, I would recommend that the board engage Municipal Resources, Inc. They're otherwise known as MRI. They're located in Plymouth, New Hampshire. So they are an executive recruitment firm that does a lot of work with cities and towns for recruitment of their chief administrative officer. I've worked with them in the past in another community, and I found their services to be excellent. I've also worked with the two individuals that are proposed to be the lead on our project, which is Reginald or Buzz Stapczynski, who is the former town manager in Andover, and then Robert Mercier, who is the former town administrator and town manager in Billerica. Both of those gentlemen will be our point of contact. But I did ask, this is assistance recruitment, it's not a full-blown recruitment, and I estimate the cost to be about $7,500. And they will dive into this thing in terms of beginning the process once you give them the go-ahead. So I would recommend they so approve, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have about this proposal.
Well, it's pretty straightforward, and you point out that it is, it's probably designed for smaller communities.
Exactly,
Obviously.
because in most
Makes
communities,
sense.
the recruitment costs
Uh,
$12,000 to $20,000.
Easy, easy.
And this is a fairly streamlined process because the number of candidates will be fairly small.
Mhm.
And they'll be working with the board, not necessarily with the screening committee, which creates a lot of time too.
And they will also be working with us probably post-town meeting to set up some sort of a timeframe of,
Yes,
so we can back plan and
Yes.
say if we want somebody on board by the 15th of September, what do we have to
so
do
I
to
think
get
that
there?
the first steps will be, they'll put together a community profile,
Okay.
which describes what the community is and will describe what the needs are for the position.
Mhm.
They'll assist the board in terms of kind of giving you some choices, but what do you think the most important qualities of the town administrator are?
Mhm.
And they'll give you some assistance. And then putting together the job advertisement, because you want to get this thing out there and get it
Right.
advertised as soon as possible.
Okay.
All right, so you said it was 7,500, that's the
Now,
5,000 for the assistance package, 1,000 for advertising allowance, and
And
the
then the fees.
1,500 for the background.
That's correct.
Okay.
Should we say not to exceed, or should we give it not to exceed?
I think a not to
8,000?
exceed is a fair place to be.
Okay, not to exceed 7,500, you think it'll be okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Excuse me, can we use some of ARPA funds to pay for this?
I'm not sure about that. It's certainly not so, huge. I worry about everybody taking ARPA funds, because we are trying to do the things that the community has asked us to do, to look at children's playgrounds, to take care of public safety, to try to hit each area. And I just don't know if they're eligible for that. We'd have to check. 'Cause
Yeah,
it's-
ARPA wants something tangible.
Yeah,
Do you have a recommendation of where this would come from?
Expenses.
Okay.
okay,
General fund expenses, not,
Mhm.
yeah,
not from ARPA, because my concern is that ARPA is unavailable.
yeah,
Mhm.
for this.
Yeah, and I hate to be the guy that you're blaming a year or two down the road when they reject the town's submission for ARPA funds.
Yeah.
And you
I'm
say,
with
who
you.
was the guy that recommended this?
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a motion for this?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to engage the services of MRI for the recruitment assistance package for a town administrator not to exceed $7,500.
Do we have a second?
second motion.
We have a motion made and seconded to approve getting the services of Municipal Resources Incorporated for the assistance to recruit the new town administrator. Those in favor?
Aye.
I have a unanimous vote, and I'm glad to get it started.
Great.
Now, you will be the point person that they
Yep.
will communicate with, and you will communicate from the board.
Exactly, and
Perfect.
that's worked pretty well, actually, when I worked with these gentlemen in other communities, exactly the way that we handled it.
We also have the annual look at the town of Barre and Hardwick memorandum of agreement or understanding for ambulance services.
We have updated version, which I neglected to put in your packet. So you have the old agreement,
Yeah, I'm just showing you what you left out.
but there's a new agreement.
There's just one here. I'll give that to you, John.
Thank you.
It's the same as the only real changes to it are the date in the first paragraph.
Yep.
In the proposed term, so in 1B, the term is for July 1st, July 23 through June 2024.
Mhm.
And then in second page, paragraph 2C, the amount that Barry will receive from Hardwick is $35,000.
Mhm.
In the past, it was $30,000. And then there, other than dates, there are no other changes to the remainder of the agreement. And we've sent it off to our colleagues in Hardwick, and I would ask you to so approve this and sign it so that we can get it on its way. Keep in mind, that, and the board knows this, but for the public standpoint, that this is kind of a down payment. The town of Barre will bill out for the cost of services
Right.
and receive a substantial amount of revenue that comes in to supplement our ambulance
Right.
budget. And I know you know that, but the
Yeah.
public may say, gee, all we're getting is $35,000 for this service.
That's just the base, and
Yeah.
then there's all of the reimbursements are
That's right.
in our favor.
At what point could the public know what's really, could we put it out there so the public does know? I mean, is there any way?
Well, you can see this year's figures, for example. I feel badly that the chief isn't here because he would have that. He could tell you, this is how much we put in, so many runs we made in Hardwick. This is what, it cost, and then what the community has paid back to us, and this is what we've gotten in ambulance receipts, because that is kept track of.
All right, how is this, who comes about this number? How, is that like a going rate, a typical thing? I mean, how do they come to this number, 35,000?
35,000?
Yeah, how does that?
I'm guessing it was cast in concrete when the town began providing these services
Well, I
back in
think
2000.
we started at about 25,000.
And it's been increasing
every year.
$5,000 every year.
It has been a moneymaker for us.
Mark, to answer your question, I didn't negotiate this agreement.
Yep.
This agreement was ready for me when I came here, and all I did was change the dates.
I'm just curious, I wanna know how.
So, yeah, I think your accountant or your fire chief
Your fire chief.
would have exactly what you're looking
Yeah.
for.
And I know that he is very amenable to coming on and by satellite phone to us if necessary, and would be happy to try to explain things for us. So I've been through those explanations in previous meetings and have found not only him being accurate, but seeing the data and the amount of revenues that we've received being equal or better than he had predicted.
Well, I have a question with that though, if that's the case, why are we looking for, why are we taking money out of an ARPA fund to fund a new ambulance? When
Well-
it should be,
Well, to fund a new ambulance out of this,
I am familiar with the way some other towns do it, so I'm
Yeah.
just wondering,
Yeah.
so.
I don't think we have significant enough revenues to fund the ambulance as well as all of the costs of maintaining the ambulances and paying the salaries of the people that we hire. But maybe some communities who are in these agreements have a better deal, is that what you're thinking?
I mean, there's always the potential we could ask for more, and there's always the potential they could go with another community.
I'm under the understanding that other communities had them and they got rid of it because it just didn't make sense.
Mhm.
Well, they were working with the town of Ware
Right.
for a period of time. They now work with the town of West Brookfield,
Mm-hmm.
and they work with us. And we have a section of the town that is closest to our,
Mhm.
contiguous to us. And I know that West Brookfield has its share. If you said to me what roads
Yeah.
exactly, I know that they're contiguous to us. And then West Brookfield has the section that's nearer to them.
Mm-hmm.
They dispatch out of the State Police Academy, I believe.
It's a long way to Hardwick.
Well, it's a long way to the other end of Barre. I mean,
Not that
haven't-
far, though. I mean,
It's a long way to the hospital where you're taking people.
We cover the west part?
We do not, I don't think we go up on Greenwich Road. We cover, north, the road coming in,
Yeah.
on Hardwick Road, coming that way. We do 32 down into Wheelwright, obviously, though that's close to us. The thing that we have to understand is, because of mutual aid and requirements in ambulances, if we decided to say, we're not gonna service them,
Mm-hmm.
we have to service them, because if we have an ambulance available and a person needs it, they will just call us and we have to come, we have to
Mhm.
service them. So, that was coming to pass to be some of the things that we were being called and getting paid nothing for going, because Ware just said, no, we're not available. So Barry was feeding these calls. So this has been sort of generated significant revenues for us to pay. We have some good paramedics and EMTs, working with us, so.
Mm.
You're obviously unconvinced, so.
No, I'm not
Yeah.
convinced because I know about the way the numbers are in some other towns. I've spoken to other towns, and I'm not gonna, talk about it, but I'm just not convinced. But that's, whatever, I didn't think, maybe it is a good idea for, to see all the numbers and how it works.
Yeah.
You know?
But I mean,
Well, I mean, this is the time for discussion before we approve it, otherwise we have it for a year.
well, I would recommend, obviously, that we are at the end of the fiscal year, we have to act.
Mhm.
And if it's only a one-year agreement, and this would be the year that we say, let's investigate it in much more depth. And I would say, I feel badly, because if the chief were here, he could give us some more specific information on that. I, for one, having watched it because I thought the same thing to you, I said, we're gonna be going up to the center of Hardwick? I mean, there's no easy way to get there, sort of thing. And it has really worked out better than I would have imagined, and we have gotten significant revenue from it. Could we do better? Perhaps, I don't know. But I would be looking for a motion for at least further discussion or potential approval.
I would move to approve the agreement between Barre and Hardwick for ambulance service.
I might be seconding that. I'll second it. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed? Okay, we have one opposed.
If you could sign at least two of those. You've got it.
And I certainly, if you'd like, I'll make a motion that we, spend this year really investigating into the specifics of it, so that next year we get to this point where we're all feeling
I
comfortable.
just find it unusual that we would need to be scraping and scratching for a new ambulance when I just don't, doesn't make sense to me.
I would say.
I think that is definitely worth investigating.
Yeah.
I think this is the right move for now, where we don't have, time to investigate it, so to speak, prior to the end of the fiscal year. Turn it, yeah. I didn't take that. Oh, we need another copy.
I think we only need two copies?
Right, but this one we
Just-
signed for Hardwick.
Just two.
This one we signed on the wrong page, though.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
Okay. We don't want to do that.
I have another one. if
I have
you
one
need it.
right here. Here we go.
That's why we made multiple copies. Just in case.
Just in case. There you go. Thanks.
And that's trash.
Do we need the third signature?
No, but just because you vote no, you can always sign it too.
Your choice, no?
I think it warrants investigation. I just
Yeah.
don't think we can do that in less than 30 days.
Well,
Particularly
I
with the
think it
chief
would-
overseas.
Yeah, especially with the chief overseas, and hopefully he'll be back, I hope, in middle of the year, I hope,
Yep.
by December, so that will be good. And he can run all of the numbers for us, and I know that the Budget and Finance Committee, from their perspective, have felt that it has been a very prudent financial decision. Can we get more? Perhaps.
And also the question that you're raising then could be, are we using it properly once
Yeah.
it's here? And that's a very different question from,
Okay, now it looks like we're moving into special events. Looking at a new race called the Muddy Princess. Something that you and I, Sandy, can participate in, I understand. I know that they have a very comprehensive event package that has been provided for us. They do meet the requirements that we have, and this is similar to other, sort of Spartan and other races that they've had. This seems to be a much smaller event and somewhat limited in scope. And so at any rate, they're seeking our approval. They have provided us with all of the information that we require for such events and looking for either questions or approval.
I would move to approve the Muddy Princess special event.
We have a motion made to approve the Muddy Princess event.
Oh, for
It will be
June 10th and 11th.
June 10th and 11th, held at the, I guess, Stone Cow Brewery and the property thereof. They have completed all of the information and have the appropriate licenses and also liability insurances. So, do we have a second?
I second motion.
We have a
Muddy
mo-
Princess.
We have a motion made and seconded for the Muddy Princess event, for the Carter Stevens property, and those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's what looks like event. And so then we have personnel, we have a wage authorization for a DPW seasonal supervisor to class 2 minimum step for Nicholas Puchalski to be paid $16.61 for the summer work.
I'd move to approve the wage authorization for Nicholas Puchalski for $16.61.
We have a motion made and seconded for the wage authorization for this seasonal employee.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's a vote. Moving on, master plan position discussion and vote.
Oh, we have a,
Common vitular for the Spotted Cow. We have a new, I guess, vitulers license request from the Spotted Cow Cafe, which I believe will be located up on West Street where the old Rising Tide, High Tide, okay, not Rising Tide, High Tide. They have completed the requirements for the common vitulers license, and do we have a motion to approve?
I'd move to approve the common victular license for the Spotted Cow Cafe.
We have a second?
I second.
We have a motion made and seconded to approve the common victular license for the Spotted Cow Cafe. Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's done. Old business, select board member liaison. Okay, discussion and vote. I think this is something, Greg, you may want to have just further discussion on, or perhaps John?
John, I believe John is the one who drafted the policy, so I
Yep.
can defer to him.
So this would be put in as a new policy for the select board. The purpose of the policy is to establish procedures for setting select board liaisons to each board, committee, and commission. It's very similar to what we talked about at the last meeting, where each one would be a point of contact for multiple boards and committees. It kind of outlines, some limitations on that, where one or more select board members already serve on a committee, like the DPW commission we're all part of. We don't need someone, labeled for that. There's some, limitations we wanted to define, that the liaison position of each select board member does not grant that member individual authority over a committee. The select board as a whole still retains that. Direction provided to appoint committees must be issued by the full select board, provided to appointed committees. So if we're changing the direction of an appointed committee, it still is through the full select board, not through the liaison. It's just making sure these things come back to the full board. It's really just to make sure that the liaison is just understanding what the committee needs and representing them to us as needed to make sure that things are moving forward. Again, if there's improper activity by appointed or elected committees, such as things that are in violation of town bylaws or Massachusetts general law, it still takes action by the full select board, not by that one liaison person. So those are just some of the limitations that it outlines to make sure that no one's using this and overstepping with this designation.
A question I have for you, John, and the policy that's presented. Is there an expectation, if I'm the liaison to the planning committee,
Mhm.
I'm supposed to attend their meetings?
No.
Okay.
Not all of their
So-
meetings.
So
So-
how do okay, so they say Maureen Marshall is now the liaison to the Conservation Commission. What
Yep.
does that mean? How do I respond to the Conservation Commission? How does the Conservation Commission use me?
I mean, I would recommend you go to one of their meetings a year or so. I think anytime there's an opening where an appointment needs to be made, you'd be in contact with the chair, reviewing aspects of that with them. If they had any specific needs, you'd be the person who would be able to speak with that chair and, help flush out what they really need to bring that to the select board.
Just, I need like 10 more meetings to go to.
No. I wouldn't expect everyone to go to every meeting that there
That'd be
are
great.
an impressive amount of boards and committees and
Yes.
commissions. So this would be essentially saying, you're the person who would understand a little bit more about those committees and commissions than the other people would. Because you can't really develop a full understanding of all of them in your free time. But
Do you think that there's any wisdom in indicating before we actually vote the policy, putting it out to the boards and saying, this is our efforts to try to have better relationships or be more effective for them as they do their work?
I don't see any issue with that.
I just would feel that people may take exception to us
Mhm.
doing this without saying to them, hey, we would like to be more helpful with
Yeah.
this help from your perspective. And I think they would agree that it would be easier than trying to say, well, do we just send this to Sandy or what do we do? They could call
Mhm.
you if you were the liaison, they could call me if I was the liaison, or Mark if he was the liaison, and hopefully get information in front of the board in a much more succinct fashion.
Yeah, I'm certainly open to getting more feedback from the boards and committees. And I think that's why it's important that we have the limitations of the position laid out so they know we're not coming in to tell them how to act or how to operate. If something is outside of Mass General Law or town bylaws, that's something the select board does need to take up.
Right.
But there's no one going in there saying, oh, well, this is how you should be doing it because that's my preference. And I think that's why having the limitations here are important. It's to understand what those committees are and what they need, not to direct them in the details of how they operate. And I think, that's important to understand, and I think we can absolutely take some time to communicate and get feedback on this before going forward with it. This also doesn't actually establish who's liaison for what, it just establishes a procedure for establishing that later.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Okay, so is the motion to proceed with the adoption of this policy subsequent to a sort of running it by for updates and/or modifications by, or somehow seeking information from those boards that we hope to help?
I don't know that I would move to approve it subject to that, because that's a little hard to define if that happens or not. I think if that's the route we want to go and give more opportunity, which I think might be a good idea, then I think the motion would be to hold the item.
Okay, hold it, and then have Sandy put together a little missive to the boards and say, please, I just don't want it to be misinterpreted, you know what I mean?
At least sent to the chair of each
Yeah.
board with a little description of what it
Yeah.
is and why we're doing it, and I can help with that.
So I'm sending your description.
Yep, this, and then we can add an explanation,
Yeah, and we
I
may
just
want to just
say that
put
we're-
draft
Yep.
Yeah.
on it.
Yep.
So people
and that we're
understand
looking for feedback.
feedback. Any questions or
I
comments?
do
about
not
that?
have any on
Okay. Okay,
So,
Thank you.
yeah, if we want to move to hold,
pardon me?
if we want to motion to hold the item.
We can move
The
to,
table, no
Okay,
action
we
taken?
don't, no, sure.
Okay.
All right.
okay, so moving along to master plan member discussion, junior
So-
member.
That's not this isn't specifically master plan, although I do want to get into that. It's kind of this is actually a policy for the select board to add the ability for junior committee members to be on boards, commissions, etc. The purpose of the policy is to set forth guidelines for the creation of junior member positions and the appointment of junior members to boards, commissions, and committees. So this would apply to all boards, commissions, and committees. Essentially sets the process so that any board could vote by majority to request that they have a junior member position opened. A junior member is defined as someone between the ages of 14 and 17. They have to meet all the requirements of members of that committee, except that they are not registered to vote because they're too young, and that they are not elected if it's an elected board or committee. So they would be appointed. They don't have a vote at those meetings. They don't have the ability to make or second a motion, but they have the opportunity to give input, to learn about the board. They can accept additional responsibilities that the chair of any board gives to them. And it would be an opportunity for them to learn, helpful for future pursuits for them, and also, an opportunity to build more interest in local government for the next generation. So this would be something that any board, even the select board, could could add a junior member. So this is a policy for that. And then along those lines, the Master Plan Steering Committee did vote back in January, and I believe that was actually already advertised at one point. We just didn't have this process laid out to add a junior member.
Okay.
I've actually seen it work pretty well. And when I was in my job in Dudley, they had a student from Shepherd Hill who would come in and, he had something better to do, wasn't there, but annually there'd be a different face and he'd give a report of what's going on in the schools, and it was a good opportunity for everyone to learn about it, and it worked out quite well.
And they have a student representative on the school committees across the state.
Yeah, worked well.
And they come in and they
Yeah.
make reports and so forth. So sometimes better than other times, but they learn a lot.
I also today actually found a similar one for the town of Fairfax, Vermont, that was put forward, that they established 2 years ago. There were a couple differences that I thought might be at least worth considering. They had a smaller age range than 14 to 17. They had sophomore, junior, or senior high school. So we could, potentially do 15 to 17, make it a bit smaller. I think 14 to 17 would be fine, though. The other thing that they had that was interesting was that they called them youth members, are not allowed to participate in executive session.
Well, yeah.
And I think that might be something to consider adding to this, amending to this. But under where it says a member, under roles and responsibilities, a third bullet point, a junior member may not participate in executive session would be an amendment I think would be worth adding to this.
Do you think then you would like to make a motion on this with that a change?
I don't know if it would be more appropriate for someone else to make the motion where
Okay.
I put this forward.
Mark, you have a comment on it?
No, I do not.
Mhm.
I'm just reading it still.
Well, I would make a motion, at least for the purposes of discussion, that we approve the policy that demonstrates guidelines for the creation of junior member positions and the appointment of junior members to boards, commissions, and committees, where following the provisions included in the policy presented, with the addition that the individual junior member cannot participate in any executive sessions. Do we have a second? We have a motion made and seconded with that amendment or that change to approve the policy and guidelines for the creation of junior member positions and appointment of junior members to boards, commissions, and committees within our community. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I think it's a great start.
Yeah, I think the other question I then have, just where it was,
So you voted too, you're not abstaining?
So he can vote.
yeah, I voted. I didn't want to make the motion or second because I put it
Okay.
forward, but
I'm confused.
where it is master plan junior member, we did establish essentially that master plan would have a junior member in January, but it wasn't under this. I don't know if we need a separate vote to establish that now, or if we
No,
can go by what we had in January.
I think what you've had previous is fine,
Okay.
personal. Okay, we have a motion made, seconded, and approved, and all set with that, Sandy?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Great job on that, and good opportunities for some of our young
Yeah,
students,
I think
for
that would be
sure.
great to get people involved,
I do.
and someone has applied for the master plan junior position.
Yeah, I know, I
Yep,
saw that.
so,
I know they're gonna get community service hours, I think, for it, or something, yeah.
So, yep, that was advertised and, still open to anyone who wants to add their application in.
Okay.
We can always put that advertisement back out too.
Okay, so the 250th anniversary Clowning for Kids agreement and invoice to approve.
The date is corrected.
Okay, good.
That's why it's there.
Yep.
Okay.
September 21st, 2024.
What is that amount?
It was,
4,500. That's right there on top.
Oh, it says Lowell Band, okay, town band.
Oh, wait.
Okay, I think we're looking for a motion to approve the invoice submitted by the 250th Anniversary Committee for the foundation not to exceed $1,250 on or before the parade. That would be our deposit, so we're looking for a $1,250 deposit to be paid to Clowning for Kids Foundation.
Okay, are these meant to be separate, Sandy, do you know? Or is this actually, because there's a UMass Lowell Band
Yeah.
head of the Clowning for Kids. I think, are those just separate items?
I don't know, they came together.
Okay.
The contract amount is $4,500, I think what we need to.
Oh, no, wait.
Is it $1,250?
Yes, yeah, I
Yeah,
think if we ignore that first page,
yeah,
this is the contract for Clowning for Kids.
right,
Yeah, $1,250
yeah.
for the September 21st. Okay. Nope,
Okay,
we're good.
24th is the 21st, 2024 is the correct date.
yes.
Yes. All right. I'd move to approve the 250th Anniversary Clowning for Kids agreement for the amount not to exceed $1,250 for
Yeah.
September 21st.
We have a second?
I second
We have a motion made and seconded to approve the Clowning for Kids Foundation payment due for the September 21st, 2024.
What's the deposit?
I'm sorry,
What's the deposit?
$1,250. Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
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 We have any- And that, Greg, comes out of an account that's, allocated for 250.
It's the two,
Yeah. Okay, now we have some appointments. We have an appointment to the Planning Board, Conservation Commission, and Barre Housing Authority. Would you please, Sandy, just indicate how you proceeded to get people who might have been interested? Did we advertise the positions
It was advertised for 2 months.
for 2 months?
2 months,
Each of these positions?
yes, both
Okay.
of them together.
And so after that, did these people file with you documents indicating they were interested?
Yes, it should be in your packet.
Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah.
Sandy, I should have asked you this. Did the planning board make a recommendation?
They did, there is an email also with that, should be in front of that.
Yeah, because that's one of those quirky
Yeah.
appointments that takes a joint vote on, in the absence of a,
Conservation
Recommendation.
and planning,
Yeah,
okay, that's the one you're talking about. The
Yeah.
Conservation Commission wants to review and make a
Yeah.
recommendation. You don't see that, but there's a table.
The Conservation Commission one, is that?
Conservation Commission is the, that's.
Oh, yeah,
Stephanie.
Yeah.
And I got a little confused on that, but I think her application, or, I don't know, Greg, did you say it, or something? She's on the Finance Committee, but she asked to come off the Finance Committee to be on Conservation.
it says, as of April 21st, 2023, I currently serve on the finance committee. If I'm wondering, I can serve on the conservation commission. So you can't serve on both.
Right.
Yeah, so she's getting off of one and would like to be the Conservation Commission representative. That's Stephanie,
Yes,
Okay.
And then the Planning Board full-time member would be Karen Keegan.
yes.
And the appointment for the Barre Housing Authority is Steve Bailey, even though they solicited in people from the whole,
The Tenants Association,
didn't,
nobody
nobody wanted
wanted
to do
to
it.
apply, so
Yeah.
they contacted the state and they gave them, a bylaw came out on the 15th of May.
Okay,
They
Mhm.
could apply for a waiver, which they did.
Yeah.
So they're asking for,
and there we have.
Yeah, and this appointment is directed by the state, essentially.
yes, by the state.
Yeah.
Okay, so
It's,
we
it's
have,
very different from our typical,
so we have 3 appointments presented to us. One for the Planning Board of Karen Keegan, full-time member. An appointment to the Conservation Commission, Stephanie Waziska, I'm hoping. Barre Housing Authority appointment, Stephen Bailey. We do have documents from each of those individuals, and we did solicit applicants for the positions for a 2-month period, and that's the result that we have.
Yes.
Okay,
no other applicants were
no other applicants
submitted. Okay.
submitted.
I would move to appoint Karen Keegan to the planning board as a full-time member.
I have actually a question about this.
Okay.
Okay,
Being that she's a Board of Health Chair and an associate member of the zoning board, is that?
I don't know, does she serve on those currently, or did she
Yes.
previous? It says previous town service, it doesn't say
She's,
she doesn't
It's
serve
not
on them
current?
now. It's not, no. It says previous
Is it?
town service. Oh, then she does say current Board of Health
Yeah, that's-
member, and associate member of the zoning board of appeals.
I don't know.
I think, I think she's legally able to do that.
That's correct, there's no conflict with, the only one is the finance committee.
Yeah.
Is the only one that has an exception that you can't appoint. People can wear many different hats if you want.
Do you see that? I guess that's the, I mean, it's a difficult one, but there's no other applicants. And where it's not, I don't know that there's a direct conflict. The zoning board of appeals, it makes it a little trickier. But
Yeah, that's
If they're on the planning board, you mean?
planning
Yeah.
board and zoning, yeah.
but
I know we don't have a whole list of applicants.
No, we
Just
don't.
didn't know this.
Yeah,
Nope.
you don't.
we've had it advertised for a while.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Current Board of Health member, she's the chair. Associate member of the zoning board of appeals. Is that typical that a planning board member sits on these, on the zoning board of appeals? I thought so, but I'm not sure about that.
I
Marion
can't-
says they have
I can't say I've
in-house.
seen it before.
I mean, there's nothing that says she can't, I don't think.
No, it's actually good knowledge.
Yeah, it is,
Say you've got someone on board that understands the zoning bylaw.
yeah.
They hold one heck of a position, though.
But they're only one vote amongst however many members.
And you need a unanimous vote to do anything for the zoning board of appeals.
Can we shut that off?
What's the problem with
It's
it?
blowing, it's
You want
blowing.
me to make it colder? I know you like it cold.
Well, at any rate, we have a motion on the floor to appoint Karen Keegan to the planning board after 2 months of soliciting other applicants. And I hate to discourage participation in town government. She's the current Board of Health member. That means she's elected, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And,
Board of appeals, is that appointed?
It is.
It is.
yeah,
So if it does, end up being a conflict of interest, there's always
yeah,
action that could be taken.
I guess
there.
as an associate, she's only voting when
someone else
she's
isn't
needed.
there, yeah.
Mhm.
Do we have a
I made the
motion on the floor?
motion,
I'll
yep.
second it.
Okay, so,
We have a motion made and seconded to appoint her to that position, seeing that there's no, while there appears to be, she has other service positions within the community, those do not seem to be things that cannot happen under state statute, so we'll call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye.
I,
Okay, we have a motion and made, seconded, and approved. Karen Keegan. The
So-
Conservation Commission,
Yeah, on this one, do we have officially then a resignation from the,
No.
okay,
And I would suggest it might not be a bad idea to time it, the appointment to take place after town meeting, because we don't want to leave the finance committee in a position where they
Right.
don't have a quorum for town meeting.
okay, so we're gonna say that Stephanie's, if she is approved, her term would start on July 1.
Yeah, I think that.
So we could
was
approve pending resignation
Yep.
from the Finance Committee to take place on July 1st.
Yep.
All right, I would move to appoint Stephanie Wasisco, sorry, to the Conservation Commission pending resignation from the Finance Committee to take effect July 1st.
I would second that. Those in favor of the appointment of Stephanie Wasisco to the Conservation Commission on July 1st, 2023?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the appointment to the Barre Housing Authority of Steve Bailey.
I'd move to appoint Steve Bailey to the Barre Housing Authority.
We have a motion made and seconded, and then I'm seeking a second. for
Second.
Steve Bailey. We have a motion made and seconded for Stephen Bailey to be appointed to the Barre Housing Authority. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, looks like a unanimous vote. Brings us to a motion to adjourn unless there is other business that needs to be discussed.
We do have public.
In the form of housekeeping, I've noticed every time I look through this, Jessica Sizer's name is on the website in various places.
Okay.
I don't know the method, but we must be able to call
Well,
someone.
it's good, it's an absolutely good thing to bring to our attention. It's sort of one of those things that gets kind of lost in the confusion of replacing her, I guess, that we didn't take the time to make that small change. Really, I mean, good observation.
Her name
Thank
must
you.
be in many places.
Oh, lots of
It's
places.
It is in many places.
I mean, we may be, I don't know how sophisticated the website is, whether we can just do it, delete and insert. Probably not.
Probably not.
So we may have to go through and kind of, work through that. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. And,
Is there a company that?
well, I sent you something. Did you get that thing
I got
on
it.
Mass
I saw it
Municipal?
too, yeah.
And what'd you think?
I just glanced at it, I
Oh,
haven't had a
okay.
chance to really.
Is there a company that we hired or pay to address the website
Not
on a
really.
regular basis?
Not really.
No.
That someone can call and say, we need a change?
No.
Well, we believe that should happen, Sam, and I know that is something that I've been looking into, and I sent some things along.
I think, I also, at some point soon, would like to move forward with a Technology and Communications Committee that would help
Yeah.
determine the best approach to that and, keep those things updated as things change.
Yeah.
So it's really, it's a lot easier to get a website built than to get one maintained.
Yeah.
Yes,
And it's something that you can't just say, well, we're not gonna pay to have that done. You have to pay somebody to do that job, because it is a job. It's
Mhm.
not like, if you get time, take care of that.
Yeah.
It's a job.
Especially if you're not, consistently paying and having someone under contract to update it, then you're talking about, developing an understanding of how to do that updating with staff who might not, have experience on the back end of a website.
Right. Right.
Because it is sometimes, an entirely different language.
Okay.
As AI is.
Oh, don't even say that. That's the scary thing. The scary thing. Okay, Greg, you have anything else before we adjourn?
No, I don't.
Okay, I would seek a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion to adjourn, seconded.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. Those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for taking the time to attend tonight, and we look forward to tomorrow night's meeting, and we look forward to the town meeting. And I would say, I know that it's hard for you to all appreciate, and I hope the public is still listening, to thank certainly Sandy Hood, who's put in an enormous amount of time. And our person who's here as sort of a interim person has put in as much diligence and expertise as we could have ever hoped, and I thank you,
Thank you.
Greg, for that.
Thank you,
It's
Sandy.
it's been a pleasure to work along with you and to gain a greater understanding of the way of the world. And our new member spends tons of time talking with Sandy, addressing issues of concern. He brings new ideas and opportunities to our board, and we're happy about that. And of course, I've always said that we're really lucky to have John. He's brought a lot of expertise enthusiasm and optimism to this job, and I thank him for being here. That being said, thank you, Sam, for coming and being so attentive to our needs.
You sure?